Hi there, YouTube community. This is Hannah. Everybody who knows me knows that I love memes. And for some people, that's probably as far as it goes. They're just like, I guess Hannah likes to LOL a lot. And that's true. I do. Um, I'm interested in discussing decentralization. And my favorite form of decentralization is Bitcoin because it's an entirely decentralized we're calling it a currency right now. We'll see as the hundreds of years go by exactly like what a decentralized, immutable ledger that can contain information, what it is that the human race will find that it's an infrastructure. Like Bitcoin's an infrastructure, and that's what people don't get when they talk about tokenizing gold or other kinds of like workarounds. Let's go back and like actually back the dollar with gold and like, okay, the powers that be already promised us that they were going to do that, and then they uncoupled it, but now they're going to promise that they're going to do it again, requiring all these different custodians that are going to skim off the top of all the proceeds. And anytime people talk about what would in their mind be the better alternative to Bitcoin, it's like what they're not getting, or something that they're not getting is hey is that Bitcoin itself, whether it's a currency or not, that's kind of like what we're in a store of value, that we're considering out, kind of like an exit ramp from fiat debasement. Certainly it is that, but within itself, it's an infrastructure for the decentralized, immutable, safekeeping of information. That we're currently calling a commodity or a currency or a store of value. Okay. So when people kind of run up against this, generally no coiners, and I've taken this Bitcoin vow of silence, and I do have to report, I have to say, I've had a couple of conversations now. This has been a couple days now since I've taken my Bitcoin vow of silence, not relative to this platform, but relative to like my conversations, because I realized that I'm that like cult like person that is always making it weird, and so I just got to stop. Right, I did a whole video about that. So there's already been a couple conversations where it was really hard, like, not to bring it up, but you know what I did this amazing maneuver. So it was like they said their thing, and then I resisted the urge and I just said, that sucks. And then there we go. I did it. I'm doing really well. This is my 2026 New Year's resolution to like not talk with no coiners about Bitcoin that I'm like making retroactive now. So I'm doing good. But generally, when no coiner type people run up against the concept of Bitcoin, totally not like getting the decentralization, totally not getting the massive like freedom, sovereignty, infrastructure implications of it. If they think about it at all, and they're like, used to be lower, now it's higher, and it just keeps going higher, they're like, well, the government will shut it down. The government will shut it down. And the real battle of our time that's going to unfold across like numerous different sort of like spheres and theaters is decentralization versus centralization. Like that's what's going on right now. And Bitcoin represents the ultimate decentralized store of value money ledger. And fiat represents the ultimate centralized, right? And I plugged into memes. Okay, so I'm gonna like pull memes into this because I think that, first of all, memes are something that most people at this point like understand to some extent. But if you understand memes, then you're halfway to understanding Bitcoin, and you're halfway to understanding some really important things about Bitcoin that otherwise it's easy to kind of like knee-jerk dismiss it. Because with Bitcoin being decentralized, and I know this better than anybody, if you try to, people are like, well, the government will just shut it down. Then to attempt to describe the mechanics by which that's not possible, and the extent to which even a 51% attack, if that was launched, involving how many hundreds of billions of dollars of like nation states banding together to like specifically print money for that purpose, or like whatever they would have to do, and that would last exactly 10 minutes because the entire decentralized like Bitcoin like node system like audits its own immutable ledger every 10 minutes. Like and like the relationship between mining rigs and nodes and all of this, like it gets into shit that makes people's eyes glaze over, and none of that is starts to be interesting until you start to be like really interested in the project in the first place, you know, and maybe start to become a miner. Like when I started mining Bitcoin, that's when all of this got like really, really interesting for me, you know, because I was like, oh, this is like how it actually works. Like these are the actual mechanics of this like freedom infrastructure that no government and no entity and no NGO and no BlackRock, like nobody can shut down. Like, how do you make something that can't be shut down? But that only seems surprising to us or even unbelievable to us because we're so fucking domesticated and born and bred, and we lived our entire lives in a world where centralized authority is the authority. We can't, it's really hard for us to like think outside that construct, you know? So just this, the government will shut it down. It takes a lot of information to combat the kinds of like unconscious assumptions that we have all the way up the chain of like how things work, like how any kind of like organized system could possibly work if it doesn't have some kind of like central authority that's steering it. And if a central authority can facilitate any kind of process, then that same central authority has enough power to like shut down that process. You know, like if this is why communism always fails. Like if a centralized authority has enough power to like feed the populace, then a centralized authority also has enough power to starve the populace. Therein lies the problem with communism every single time in every single manifestation. So yeah, getting into like rigs and nodes and authentication and ledger and running protocols and implementation, like people don't want to hear that. Okay, they don't want to hear about any of it in the first place, but they're just like, the government will shut it down. But the fact that we all kind of get, I think we all kind of get memes at this point because we're very lucky to live in this time where some real serious like hardcore shit has happened with meme guerrilla warfare. And I am proud to say that I have been doing my part with the meme guerrilla warfare. So back to memes, everybody who knows me knows that I love memes. Yeah, maybe they just think that I really love to LOL, and I do. But I think, you know, fairly on, I started like realizing the power of memes, and it's a decentralized power. Here's what I would call the anatomy of a meme. Okay, so the humor is the rocket fuel. Imagine it's like a rocket. Okay, so there's the fuel and there's the payload. And as we know with rockets, it's like most of the physical body of the rocket is like falls off, you know, because it needs all that body to contain all the fuel that to reach escape velocity, right? Escape velocity in a meme context would be like actually becoming viral, actually becoming memeable, you know? So the payload is the truth, some kind of like true thing that's being said that you can just recognize no matter how fucking psyoped you are, you can just recognize that. And then the humor is the payload that's going to like launch it into escape velocity, because nobody's going to nobody is asked to share memes, and nobody is prevented from sharing memes unless you live in a country where they're arresting 12,000 citizens a year for their social media footprint, like the UK or whatever, you know. Like you're not being it's permissionless, you know, just like Bitcoin. Like no one can make you do it, no one can make you not do it. So with memes, and we've learned this a long time ago with stand-up comedians. Like stand-up comedians have been doing this forever. They're gonna like what is really the signature of like a very, very successful stand-up comedian, whether they're family friendly or not, is that they're gonna kind of say some shit that's like you almost don't want to laugh, but like you're laughing because it's so funny, you know, because there's something true about it. There's something true about it. And the humor is the rocket fuel, like that's the delivery system. But the truth is that kernel, you know? So with memes, it's that's why I say that's the anatomy of a meme. So I kind of realized, like I was fairly unconscious, I guess, about I definitely ran across some like spicier memes and less spicy memes. And there's ones that, you know, on Facebook or whatever back in the day, you're going to be more like, this is more likely to offend my aunt on Facebook, or this is less likely to offend my aunt on Facebook. But like, is this going to like reflect poorly on my social media footprint? And I've created a social media footprint over the last, I'd say definitely like 5, 6, 7 years that makes me like fucking totally unemployable. You guys, I realized that a while ago, and I've been in Facebook jail and Instagram jail and every kind of jail so many times for my sharing of inappropriate memes that like went against the narrative. And then it turns out 6 months later, now we all are like, oh, Hunter Biden's laptop was a thing. Oh, like COVID lab leak, that is a thing. And you know, there's lots of like warriors out there there, and I've done a little bit of this myself, that are like you know, like in the middle of COVID, like psyop, or like this is an actual like NIH study that contradicts this narrative about masks or whatever. And this is one of our trusted authorities, right? And then I get put in jail for fucking that. But like, you know, where this kind of split happened between like, first it's supposed to be like trusted authorities and like don't listen to anybody else, but then the trusted authority said something like 8 months ago that now we're not, you're also deplatformed or like put in jail for like even posting that thing. So then you get this picture that you're like, oh, there's actually like a different kind of power, you know, entity that's like steering this, and like what's supposed to be visible to us and what's not, you know. But gosh, it's okay. Let me just not get too far up my own ass here. I think it was like in I'm gonna say like 2016 or something like that. My rule of thumb was just like, if it makes me laugh, then I'm posting it, because I'm kind of picky about humor. Like I'm picky about my humor. So not everything makes me laugh. Some things I'm like, I see what it is you're going for here, but I don't, it's just not that funny, you know? Maybe it's like too highbrow, maybe it's too lowbrow. I don't know. So there was one that it personally made me laugh. So I reposted it, and then it caused this like little shitstorm of like comments and stuff. And like what it was like some kind of like girl being detained by the police or TSA or something like that, and saying, well, I insist on a female officer frisking me. And then the male officer saying, well, it's your lucky day because I identify as female. And I was like, that's funny, you know? And so then super libtard girl, you know, that I know in real life, like she comes on and she's like, that's super disrespectful or like appalling or whatever. And then another friend of mine, sometimes you can just let people like fight it out in the comments, you know. And then another friend of mine who's actually like secretly trans or trans leaning or whatever was like, well, but it makes a valuable point. If none of us are, if biology isn't the arbiter of like what your orientation or identity, gender identity is, and we're not supposed to be the arbiters of each other's orientation or gender identity, then at what point, like this is the absurdity that can kind of arise, you know, where it's like, you're not allowed to tell this police officer that he doesn't feel that he's a female that day. And if he feels that he's female, then he's really a woman. And so he has every right legally to frisk her when she's asking to be frisked by a woman instead of a man. You know what I mean? Like, this is the kind of thing. And I watched this play out in the comments. I don't even think I had to do anything because they just like fought each other like fucking beta fish, you know? And I was like, huh, you know? I mean, like I said, like 2016 is a long time ago in like meme years. Okay, you guys, I've come a long way since then, but I was just like, wow, you know, I hadn't really at the time like super duper like thought through all of this. I just fucking reposted it. And then it turns out that there's this like super rich like ideological sort of like debate, like getting down to the actual root of the beliefs of like sort of either side that can occur as a result of like arguing about this meme that I posted, you know. And I was like, damn, that's pretty cool. So back to me making myself essentially like unemployable. I'm a truck driver. So, I mean, I could have like a swastika tattooed on my forehead and I probably still like have a job, you know, like you can't really like fire, or, I mean, if you do get fired as a truck driver, it would be because I was unsafe or not in California where they issued like 62,000 CDLs to people that can't even speak English. But I mean, generally speaking, it's like, it's going to have something to do with your performance. It's a meritocracy generally, unless you're in Gavin Newsom's California, but right. So I knew over the last certainly 5 years that I was just like kissing my ass goodbye relative to any kind of like, oh, I'm gonna, I have an education, like I have a master's degree. Like there's always sort of been that thought, like maybe one of these days I'll go back into that world and like go back into teaching or something like that. Like I knew that I was making myself fully fucking unemployable in that kind of world, like with my social media footprint. All I would have to do is just look. And even when people friend me and I meet them out, because I'm really nice and other people are really nice and they're like, oh, I'm going to friend you. Like, what's your thing? And I'll be like, good luck. Enjoy that. You know what I mean? And sometimes you find out people are in the same sort of like space as you. And sometimes they're like, they just quietly like leave the room. They're like, never mind. Like, you're one of those people. Like, you're a Nazi, fascist, racist, misogynist, like asshole, MAGA, fucking mass murderer, like whatever it is that people think, So all that's been interesting as it's played out. But so meme guerrilla warfare though it's decentralized. Okay, so like as an individual, certainly as a person that has a platform, like, or as even a nation state, like, this is what I'm saying when I say things like Bitcoin is the new nuclear arms race. It's like everybody's got to have it. So you either like fucking get some, or the train is leaving the station, and now you're gonna be trying to play catch up later. Which is like Germany sold off like a gazillion freaking Bitcoin like 2 years ago or something, and like look at them, It's like it's just a bad call. It's like a nuclear arms race is where, whether you want to have nukes or not, like if you're neighboring nations, like if they have them, you just gotta have them. Everybody's just gotta have them. So Bitcoin's kind of like that, like you either have it or you're gonna be left behind, because there's like Bitcoin is a speculative attack on the dollar, and it's I mean, we already went through a massive wealth transfer. Like that's what COVID was a massive wealth transfer from all the like smaller economic entities to like the big ones, But at the same time, Bitcoin is a speculative attack on that entire fucking thing, that's just sucking money out of it and demonetizing it, which is so cool. So, memes are kind of like a nuclear arms race too, in a sense that anyone, it kind of like, let me like do a little sort of like historical thing of like how I see social media content as having evolved. So it used to be that the content is the content, so the video that the White House puts out or whatever, or any individual, any entity, like that's the content, right? And then things started getting, like there's been lots of psyops, like 9/11 was a psyop, but like COVID was such a big psyop, right? That it started splitting people into camps. And there was so much, and I gotta not make this too long because I'm losing the light, but like there was so much like doubling down. This is centralized authority coming from where, because all the nations were doing it, and all of the like media broadcasting and public health entities, like everyone who was in a position of authority, every entity that was in a position of authority was like crunching on the regular people with this, So there started to be this like ferocity in the comments section, right, of people like pushing back on what was obviously a fucking psyop. So then you got into this like next phase where the question of whether the comments were left on or whether the comments were turned off was like a major question, because during the Biden administration, the White House was like constantly turning the comments off on things, because they just can't have that. People were lighting their asses up, and like any kind of like truth seeking, authenticity seeking kind of like content that's out there, like this, like me right now, like you wouldn't turn the comments off, because you're seeking, like you're doing the best that you can to like present what you see as the reality of the situation, whether you're an individual or an entity. And then especially if you're the government, you're supposed to be like serving the people that are there commenting and doing your best job to represent them or to be responsive to them or whatever. And so it was definitely during the Biden administration, that just the comments getting turned off was just like the deal, like shit was just turned off, So but sometimes there would just be this like rash of like hundreds or thousands of comments before they would turn it off. That somebody somewhere was like, pull the plug, So then we kind of got into this landscape, and we're still heavily in this landscape where like the comments are the content. I mean, I'll see so many like reels on Instagram or whatever where it's just like you just kind of see the thing or the video or whatever the person thing for a couple seconds, but then the video is actually like somebody like scrolling, you know, with the screen recording, like the comments, and just like the hilarity of seeing this person like get lit up, you know. Um, so yeah, we kind of moved into like there were first it was like the content was the content, and then it became like the comments are the content, and so this is kind of like evolved like adjacent, you know, to meme warfare. And so when I talk about decentralization and people are like, well, the government will shut down Bitcoin, and I'm like, God, it's like, you know, there's some mechanics involved, and you can't, like, if I try to explain to you the rigs and the nodes and 51% attack and the unlikelihood of that and the fact that it wouldn't even work for more than 10 minutes, blah, 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 people's eyes glaze over. But like, if you get how comment warfare, and I mean, if there's enough comments to like get an entity to like turn the comments off on their thing, then it's like, I'm sorry, you won. Like, that's amazing. And just the fact, then that'll get shared around. Like the fact that like the comments got turned off, you know, on the Biden White House's latest blah, blah, blah is like amazing, right? It's amazing. Or on people's even posts on Twitter, like whatever, you know, or people deleting the post, that kind of thing. But yeah, adjacent to that, meme warfare is like, oh, the government will just shut it down, you know? Because I'm sorry, like we have an administration right now, whether you like it or not, we have an administration that is meme literate for the first time in like American United States history. They're meme literate. And they're actually like using like they're completely like accessing and resourcing like the conversation that's going on in the like memosphere, you know, in terms of their social media footprint. And it's like wild to see, you know. And leftists are like really getting dragged behind the horse here and get left behind, because the whole left can't meme thing it's so real, it's so true. It turns out that if you just have some kind of common sense thing, that common sense, I mean, you know, it's been said that anybody who's like a far right nationalist now would have just been considered like a normal fucking person for the last couple hundreds or thousands of years, right? Where if you're positioned on the right or the center or the left, it's like those kinds of like where that spectrum should be like has like drifted so much and been pulled so dramatically left, right? So yeah, the the absolute ferocity of a decentralized like meme warfare environment, where essentially as a result of its own sort of like ideological underpinnings, like the left can't meme. So there's a battle being fought that they have no ammo, and they don't even have any like weaponry. Like what leftists need to argue is like long text blocks, you know. Because if you have a really ideologically complicated position that involves like twisting yourself into a pretzel mentally and like jumping through your own asshole and like a lot of like everything societally is a social construct, like blah, 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 like all this kind of thing. Just all this kind of like twisting logic and renaming things, like manipulating language and all that, you know, it's unmemeable. You can't meme that. No, you have to do a big long text block. Whereas if you just have something common sense to say, then it's very memeable. You know, there's just some kind of like, again, there's the payload, that's the truth. And then there's the rocket fuel, which is the humor. You can make a meme. I make memes all the time. Like no one's obligated to share that shit around. And the fact that they do is because enough people resonated with that thing that it becomes viral, and it just like is eating the world alive. It's just like everywhere. So to the extent that like the government can't shut down Bitcoin because it's decentralized and people don't really get that, it's like have you seen what's happened on the world stage as the governments and different entities try to like shut down memes? They just end up getting memed about even harder, or even like individuals with platforms, they get memed about super hard. And you can't shut it down because it's decentralized. Like that, this is the definition of decentralization. It arises from a community that's like interested enough in that ideology or that perspective that they, of their own free volition and time, want to support it or share it or like amplify it, you know, which is the case with Bitcoin. No one anywhere is required to run a node. It's just a voluntary thing to say, I want to do something to further support and substantiate the Bitcoin network and to make it that much more robust and strong. I'm losing the light. So that's maybe like kind of a big ramble. Like I said, I'm losing the light, and I just wanted to make sure I said something, you know, but The the concept of decentralization is central to our time. This is, I mean, if you kind of look at all the things that are playing out right now on the world stage, and look at it through the lens of like, is this a contest between the forces of centralization, you know, centralized authority, and decentralization? Like I said, any entity that has the power to bestow a thing also has the power to take that thing away. And we as a global mass are interested in like moving out of that space, you know? So Bitcoin is decentralized. It's decentralized in a way that is too complex and complicated for most people kind of entry level to like want to get into that. Memes are absolutely decentralized in a way that you've seen it work now. Like, you've seen the mechanics of it, and you're going to keep seeing the mechanics of it because it's a brilliant way to make a lot of people laugh, but it also fucking totally destabilizes and delegitimizes centralized authority, and it delegitimizes narratives that we're being told that are obviously problematic and don't hold water, you know? So that's it. That's what I wanted to say. I hope you have a great night, and I'll talk to you later. Bye.